Hey everyone, this is Case coming in on the final editing pass of this episode and noting that there's a point in here where we are talking about the risks of on-set stunts and things that involve blanks that might come off as a bit insensitive, given the current era of very recent incidents on sets that is everywhere. And I just want to say that it's not. We recorded this a couple weeks, like 2 months ago, and it was shortly before the whole Rust shooting thing. And we're not. I wouldn't say it crosses any lines, but I did feel like I needed to give a heads up before we actually get into the episode. Jean-Claude Van Damme was originally cast to be the Predator. It is the most insane bit of trivia. Like, when you think that if he had been in this movie, because he got fired on set pretty early on, but if he had been in this movie, think about what that star-studded cast that we'd be talking about here.
Welcome to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Another Pass podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Sam Alisea.
Hello.
And we have a returning guest today, because we're going to be talking about an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and who better to talk about an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie with than Leo Goodman?
Hello.
Yay! Get to the chopper!
Was I supposed to do an Arnold impression there? Is that what we were expecting?
No. But last time you were on talking about Terminator 3.
That's true.
Which is, I don't think anyone would ever argue is the best Terminator movie. In fact, most would argue it is not one of the better Terminator movies.
Right.
Yep. I don't think any of us made that argument.
No.
I don't recall any of us saying it was the best one.
No.
And that is the usual format for the show, where we talk about a movie that is not necessarily the best and discuss how we can make it better. But today, this is a 5th episode. This is episode 120 of the show. And that means we are talking about a movie that had adversity and actually overcame it to create a better product as a result. And for that, we are going to today be discussing Predator.
Yes.
So, like right off the bat, all right, I'm going to be honest. When we first started talking about Leo coming back on, and we started discussing, well, let's do maybe a 5th movie, since you had been on for a regular episode. And we had a list of suggestions that people had made. And I had Predator on the list, mostly because I knew that Jean-Claude Van Damme had been cast as the Predator and then had been fired, and they had to do a complete redesign and reshoots of that stuff. And then I started doing research for this, and oh my God, was this a shoot from hell?
So much more went wrong. It's beautiful how much crazy stuff there was in this. And dear listeners, there is a lot of stuff you can find in this. Like I just went through YouTube. There's all these behind the scenes stuff detailing how crazy some of it was, with also some really, really, really nice just cast interviews and them like praising each other and saying good stuff. Like, sounds like in some ways they make it sound like a fun set, and then you go into the stuff that didn't go into some of those official movies, that behind the scenes stuff they put out, and it's just madness.
Yes. It is so messy.
And a lot of the factoids we're going to be dropping comes from an article which is Guns and Shea Butter, an Oral History of Predator, which is really interesting because when there are conflicting reports, they try to reconcile it but give each of the different quotes, and some of those are fascinating. So I can't wait for us to get to some of the areas where history and the truth diverge.
That's the nicest way of putting it.
Yep.
Yeah. But Sam, before we started recording, you dropped the bombshell that you had never seen this movie before.
I have never seen Predator. Now, I knew, kind of, because other people in my life had explained Predator to me. You're like, oh, well, this is what happens, and blah, 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 blah. Because, I actually told a friend I had no plan to ever watch this movie. So go ahead, tell me all about it. Also, one of my friends there was a Arnold Schwarzenegger action figure, but it was giant. This thing was so big. It was maybe 20 inches or something. And she used to use it to play with her Barbies. So he was always the bad guy, and he would kidnap us. It was so weird. But
did she do the accent?
She did. She was very, very committed. And it was something that she stole from her brother and like, just like, but what I remember about him was that all of his clothes came off so that he just had like black spandex on. So I guess so the kids could like, I don't know, reenact the mud scene. I don't know, because it didn't come with mud. But anyway, so that's part of the reason why I knew.
Kids will find mud. Kids will find mud.
Oh, no, secretly, it was like one of those action figures where if you put water on it, it will change color, and so it'll be mud colored.
Honestly, if that were true, that would have made it 1,000 times cooler. I loved all the change color toys. But yeah, no, like, so this is part of the reason why I knew the basic plot, because her brother told me the plot. But I had never seen it. And I have to say that, for, like, honestly, the movie holds up. I mean, it's like, what, 34 years old? It was 1987, right? And so it's about 34 years old. And I think that it definitely does a good job in terms of, we have definitely talked about this before, Case, you know, saving your monster, not necessarily revealing it right up front. Like, it's really good at that, like, you know, and really good at building that tension. And it kind of, it also has a really lovely build because it kind of goes in like, you know, something's wrong with this mission and something seems sketchy with it, but they're going in and they're doing it. And it feels like a very standard modern warfare action film, right? Lots of explosions and lots of stuff. And then all of a sudden, you know, it is like subtle in the same way, but it just starts turning and it starts turning on the crew that is there. Like, they've accomplished their mission, kind of, sort of, but like now they're being hunted, and it's really, I think it still holds up really well 34 years later. It's really well done.
Absolutely.
And the music is really good. The score is good, which we already talked about in Terminator 3. You need a score to build tension.
Yep, that was a big part of us talking about T3.
Yeah,
and you're absolutely right. This, like, because right from the first goddamn shot, that's that it's just this really tense, like really intense, like score going on, because there's nothing happening at first.
Right.
There's nothing happening right in the beginning. There's just people talking, like no words are being spoken, helicopters are coming down, and the music right away is just like, don't misunderstand, this is not like this is all tense. You should already be excited. You should already be nervous about what's going on. That's what that music is saying. Every moment of that just opening right there. And it keeps on going throughout with that.
Yeah, that was Alan Silvestri coming right off of doing Back to the Future. So definitely a lot of power going into this production. Probably the most famous part of the production outside of Schwarzenegger himself in terms of like Hollywood clout, because this movie, from start to finish, probably shouldn't have been made. It was first-time screenwriters, Jim and John Thomas, who all of the anecdotes are like, oh, they slipped the script under the producer's door.
Yeah.
It's a little more complicated than that. They knew a script reader who read it and was like trying to get people to see it. But like, proverbially speaking, yes, that is what happened. Like, this was a first-time script, which was them being inspired by Rocky IV in a weird way, where they're like, oh yeah, let's have someone like a Rocky fighting an alien.
Well, because like it was a joke that people were making, or that they made somewhere, where people were just like, well, Rocky's beating everybody. Next, he's got to beat aliens. Like basically saying like, there's nowhere else for Rocky to go. He's got to fight an alien now.
Yep, got to go to space. So they write this script, and apparently it was kind of rough. Schwarzenegger had a lot of notes and kind of put a lot of effort into sort of making it once he actually got a chance to read it. It was actually so rough that when they went off to go shoot it, they cast Shane Black, the scriptwriter for Lethal Weapon, and has gone on to do so many amazing projects. But they cast him in the movie just so that they could have him on hand to do rewrites, which he declined to do because he was like, no, I got cast to be an actor. And when he found out it was like actually not so much because of his acting, he was kind of frustrated and was like, nope, not going to do it. And they decided, okay, well, you're going to die first then.
I saw, like, there's some sources that are basically just like, oh, he was pissed off because he wanted to be an actor. I saw one where also had him just saying, no, I looked at the script and was like, no, the script is good. Just stop screwing with it. Do the script. Just stop screwing with it so much. Do the script. Like, sort of a combination of, I don't want to, of I'm here to do the one thing. I'm here to act. And also just no, you're tinkering too much. This is going to work. Do it like this. And he's the guy. If you're wondering, if you're not sure who it was, Shane Black is the guy that keeps on trying to make the big dude laugh with jokes about how big his girlfriend's pussy is.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That is the writer of Lethal Weapon and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And then the first member of the crew to get killed because he didn't want to rewrite the script.
Yeah, and it's an early production for everyone. Joel Silver hadn't done any hadn't been a producer yet. He had been an executive working on movies like Commando right before this. And then they hired John McTiernan, who is an alum of our fifth movies, because we talked about the original Die Hard like 40 episodes ago. And that is, and that was also like a triumph of work.
You know what? Never mind. I definitely did listen to that. I definitely did listen to that one. Now that I'm thinking of it, yeah.
Yeah, McTiernan can handle a tough shoot and can make things work pretty well. But this was his second movie. This is before Die Hard. And when you look at his track record coming off of his first movie, which was, I believe, called Nomads, he goes Nomads in 86, Predator in 87, Die Hard in 88, The Hunt for Red October in 90. Oh. Like, that is a killer run right there.
It's a good few years. It's a good few years right there.
And he continues to have a great run up until he goes to jail for wiretapping one of his producers.
Oh, I didn't know that part. What? Wait, for wiretapping one of his producers?
Oh my God.
Apparently he was in a fight when they were shooting rollerball, so already at the nadir of his career. But
wow.
Like as in he tried to plant a bug on him? Like a listening device?
Yeah, on his like phones.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that? Okay. I have some stuff to take care of after this. Let's drop it. Keep talking.
Yeah. Just move.
Matt, cut that out.
Yeah.
We don't want any, admitted crimes.
But once Schwarzenegger was behind it, obviously this movie was going to get made from that point. Like when you get Arnold Schwarzenegger on a project, it's gonna happen.
Can we just going with before we lose it with the thing about it originally being an idea for Sylvester Stallone and then going to Schwarzenegger. Just one of the is apparently saw in some interviews how there was this rivalry for such a long time in the 80s there between Schwarzenegger and Stallone, because each of them is basically just like neck and neck to being called the biggest action star in the world at the time. Like they were the two biggest, and so they were constantly trying to get the biggest one. And did you know about Schwarzenegger tricking Stallone into taking the movie?
Yes.
Which one?
The movie is Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
Yep.
And it's about I remember seeing this. It's about a cop who, for some reason, has to end up living with his mother, who is I'm someone's gonna hurt me for this, but I'm blanking on her name. The mother from the Golden Girls, I believe it is. No one else knows her name right now?
Oh, it's Estelle Getty.
Okay.
Yeah.
And basically, and so apparently Schwarzenegger read the script and hated it. But then the next day, like he's on the phone, like Stallone calls him up and is like, "Oh, hey, have you heard anything about this Stop My Mom Will Shoot movie?" And Schwarzenegger goes, "Oh yeah, I just read it. I really love it. I think it's brilliant. I think the premise is just genius and it's going to be a hit." And then and then finds out that Stallone went and took it, and and it tanked. And it was awful. And I very much enjoy that.
Yeah, Schwarzenegger is an evil genius, and like I need to emphasize the evil part. We'll talk about a way that he was later once we actually get into stuff that happened during the production.
Yeah,
but, man, like it's just wild. Like you try to sell this movie, and it's gonna be this like crazy adventure of, they claim that this is the movie that coined the term manly men.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, shouldn't be that complicated of a term to coin anyway in the first place.
Yeah.
But, it's like, let's get the biggest guys. We have the iconic, like, two guys with giant biceps, like, arm wrestling / like, handshaking that has become just a giant meme. Comes from this movie. When Carl Weathers and Arnold Schwarzenegger lock arms. Like, this is a movie about, like, let's get the biggest motherfuckers on the planet. And then show off how not impressive they actually are. Like, the part about it that's really interesting is that it's a subversion of the action movie tropes. Like, this comes right off of Commando, and it is a movie that honestly is taking the Commando kind of style of like, look at this over the top character and being like, oh, all that physicality, all this like Superman level action movie star-ness of Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, he's totally outclassed in every way by this Predator.
I want to say, as someone who's never seen this movie but has seen that meme, that moment, I was like, oh, that's where it's from.
I wouldn't say that it makes it look like everything they do like doesn't matter. It's so much it is like it makes a point in the beginning of showing them just completely demolishing all those other guys. And then again, and the point is like that. Yes, these guys are really tough. These guys are really everything, but they're up against someone who just has the tools beyond.
Right, they're so
dealing
outclassed,
with.
is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, these are the toughest of the tough, the manliest of the men. They can show up and wipe out a bunch of terrorists and like who have taken down CIA agents and like are and in that opening like firefight when they attack the guerrilla forces. They're making quips. Schwarzenegger has a Commando style, like, stick around line right there. Like, those quips only happen at this chunk of the movie because they're trying to play up the action movie tropes of the day. And then when they're like, okay, we have to go through this valley, they're like, well, that sucks. Like, they all are very aware that they're going into a death box if they actually have enemy forces. So it's not like they're caught off guard. Like, they're very aware that they're not in a good position. And then just systematically, all of these like tough guys are just defeated by this thing that is just so much beyond them.
Yeah, the whole thing with they're going into it going, okay, this is gonna suck, but we can handle any human thing that can possibly be thrown at us. And then there's something in the trees that ain't no man. There's and it's like, no, there's something that's completely beyond our experience.
And you can tell there's such a well-oiled machine as a group, right? And they start to unravel mentally, honestly, and you watch them unravel, like just kind of lose it.
Because you were talking about that opening scene, the opening one where they're taking out that whole enemy encampment.
Yeah.
My one thing with like it's an awesome scene. It's a fucking kick-ass scene as they're just destroying it. The problem with it is that Schwarzenegger makes a whole big deal about we're not assassins, we're here to save people, we're only rescue people, and they are not behaving like they are trying to save any. They're blowing up like. When Schwarzenegger sends the truck in, like uses his environment in a very good way, like he knows I've got to take out all those guys. Oh, hey, here's a truck that's just like the wheels running. Oh, I'm just gonna make the truck roll into them and blows up the building. Okay, fine. But then they start throwing explosives into every other building. They just start mowing down every tent. I'm like, you don't know what these are, dude. You're not acting like you're trying to let anything walk out of here alive. And I thought you were trying to save anyone.
It's so funny because I thought the same thing. Like, I was like, wait, was that the last hostage? Like the guy that was shot? So they just like, is this a revenge miss? And then I kind of was just like, you know what? It's the 80s. Let's not think about this. It's fine.
Well, I think there is an in-universe justification for some of the level of brutality that they inflict, which is that just before that, they actually come across the Predator's handiwork. They come across that group of like Green Berets, I think, that had all been just like skinned, probably not skinned alive because the Predator probably killed them first and then skinned them, but like skinned, which is pretty fucked up.
Schwarzenegger says they were skinned alive, but he has no way of, I don't know, of knowing whether they were alive when he was skinned. He says that.
Yeah, given the Predator's MO, the Predator later skins several things and does it after he's killed them. So I think Schwarzenegger it's kind of the parlance of our times, and also probably assumed that a human would do that to torture a person as opposed to an alien that would be taken home. He would wonder, why would a person do this? And a person would do that to torture, but an alien would do that because it's like, look how big this fish I got was.
Fair. Okay, you're right. Yeah. You're right, because that's the part of the movie where they still think whatever it was people. Okay,
right.
Yeah,
and then they come across the camp and they think that these are the people who did that.
And yes, and that is true. But Schwarzenegger has the moment where he says, "They killed a hostage. We're going in now," and they take out the first few guys with stealth. But then after that, you don't see them actually going, "Okay, let's so we can avoid destroying everything in that one place." They just start shooting all over. Like Jesse Ventura brings out old Painless, the friggin' Gatling gun, the mini gun, which I think like the same one like they use in T2. And he's and it's just I'm looking at that, I'm just like, that is not a weapon that you use for a rescue mission. That is a weapon that you use, understanding I know nothing whatsoever of military, but it just seems to me that the way that he's handling it and the way that they're doing everything there, they're not checking to see who's in any building that they're blowing up. Which again, as you said,
no, that is a weapon that is not that is not a weapon meant for rescue missions. That is not a weapon meant for humans. That is a weapon meant for helicopters when you're trying to take out a building.
Yeah, that's a weapon. Yeah, that's a weapon that you're supposed to have in a helicopter when you're just like, I have to destroy everything within this particular area. And they're carrying it around. They're like, so on our stealth mission to rescue people, we're going to again, got to specify this, on a stealth mission, they are bringing this huge gun that they've got to lug around, which again, in the behind the scenes stuff, like all the other casts are talking about how crazy this gun is, and then Jesse Ventura is just like, I don't know what they were all complaining about, it's not that bad. Maybe it's just me, because he was a guy that was actually a veteran.
Yeah,
him and the dude that plays blanking on the character's name.
Yeah, Poncho is his nickname. It's Jorge Poncho Ramirez. It's Richard Chavez is the actor.
Chavez. That's what I was going for.
Yeah, they have possibly one of the most quoted scenes together.
Yeah. You're hit. You're bleeding. I ain't got time to bleed. Those are the two only members of the cast who are actual veterans. And I know that like in an interview later, Ventura talks about like how happy he was that scene got into it, because it was like, we're the only two veterans. That was like the scene that was just us, and it's one of the most quoted lines.
Yeah, let's take a moment just to talk about the cast, because there's some interesting bits there, and that's part of it. Originally, they wanted to cast exclusively veterans, knowing that they were getting Schwarzenegger, but they ended up with Jesse Ventura and with Richard Chavez, who were actual vets. Ventura, who at this point had already started his wrestling career and had been a Navy SEAL when he was in Vietnam, definitely fits the part. Apparently, and Leo, you found this interview, the script called for him to do all the disgusting stuff with the tobacco chew. And they were like, oh, do you know how to chew tobacco? And he like took out a can of tobacco chew, and it was like, oh, you are just this character. Oh, okay, perfect. We're asking for a 6'4" giant who could hold this thing, and you're an inch taller than that and already fit the bill perfectly. Great. But they fleshed out the cast with Bill Duke, who had been on Commando. And here was one that I found really fascinating. They cast Sonny Landham as Billy, the tracker on the team. And the studio's insurance company required him to have a bodyguard on set.
To protect him? He needed a bodyguard to protect him, Case?
No, not to protect him. To protect everyone else, because he apparently was a wild man who would get drunk and just randomly start attacking people. This guy is a fucking crazy man.
That's insane.
I looked into him when I read that. I was like, what's going on with this guy? So after 9/11, he had I think it was a congressional run.
Of course.
Where the Republican Party would not accept him because he had made too many openly racist claims out in public. Like, this was a crazy dude.
Wait, he tried to run for Congress?
Pardon me, governor. He tried to go for governor of Kentucky, and he was too racist to be governor of Kentucky.
But he was actually in the election. He was actually. Wow.
Yeah, he ran as an independent ultimately.
Well, and I guess that's all that's got to be got. I guess that's all there is to say about political figures.
Yeah, there's no
movie.
other. Mm-hmm. None. Mm-hmm. There's no other governors.
Two governors.
Two actual governors. Two governors that if you went back to 1987 right now and told anyone in the world that I guess hadn't worked with them, hey, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse Ventura are both going to be governors, they'd laugh in your face. But but people that were on sets with them are just like, oh no, they're amazing, charismatic people and actually much smarter than you think. And that's again, Arnold Schwarzenegger, evil genius.
Who speaking of Schwarzenegger, and do we want to talk about Schwarzenegger messing with people on cast, or are we going to wait for that later?
Well, we'll get to that in 1 second, because I just want to call out other people. Obviously, we mentioned Shane Black. Right. Arnold's friend Sven Ole Thorsen, who is just like a buddy of Arnold's, who has been in just every movie he's ever done, is, just a nice little Easter egg. He is a Soviet military advisor in the background at one spot, because, you can't do an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie without him. He's literally in every one. And then, of course, we've got Carl Weathers, who is wonderful, super charismatic. Everyone knows him from being Creed in the Rocky movies. And he had a really good story about how apparently on set, all of these like manly men were really obsessed with like topping each other in terms of who was like the most in shape. So they would like wake up and sneak into gyms at certain times. The gym, by the way, was actually the ballroom of the hotel they were all staying at, and Arnold Schwarzenegger had flown down all of his workout equipment and turned the ballroom into this makeshift gym for them to all work out in.
Schwarzenegger brought a gym from Los Angeles to Mexico for the cast to work out so that they could make sure to have top tier muscles every day when cameras were rolling. And according to according to Bill Duke, according to dude who plays Mac, basically Schwarzenegger and Ventura and Sonny and Chavez would get up at 3 a.m., run for an hour, or then go work out in the gym for an hour and a half, then have breakfast, then go to set, and then go work out again later on before going to bed. And that after like 1 week of that, he's like Bill Duke, like after the first week, stopped doing it, and they would just call him a wimp and keep going. And Carl Weathers wanted to work like was very self-conscious about, I need to also look good with these guys, so I'm going to work out, but he didn't want to work out with them. And so he would wait for them to leave. He would like go get a cup of coffee, wait for them to leave the gym, and then go work out by himself to give nothing. Like he says that in the interview, give nothing away. Trying to keep this all close to the vest, what I'm doing.
Yeah, they were all trying to pretend like their muscles were just natural, even though they were all working out like crazy. And they were super competitive about this, because the thing that we keep on wanting to say, because it's such a fucking funny story, was that, again, Arnold Schwarzenegger, evil genius.
You should write a children's book called Arnold Schwarzenegger, Evil Genius.
Yeah. Yeah, Leo, tell the story.
So this this comes from you can find this on YouTube if you want. There's this like 55 minute long behind the scenes making of that they did back then with all these cast interviews. And there's a part where Jesse Ventura is looking at the camera and he's like, I went into wardrobe and I saw the sizes that they'd taken of everyone's muscles, and I saw that my bicep was an inch bigger than Mr. Universe, Arnold Schwarzenegger himself, and that made me feel pretty good. And then it cuts to Schwarzenegger in his interview, and he goes, "Oh, then I guess my joke worked because I told the wardrobe people to do that." So he told them to tell Ventura that his muscles were smaller, and then later on, when they were in the gym together, Schwarzenegger apparently says to Ventura, "Hey, let's compare muscles. Hey, let's bet a bottle of champagne. I bet a bottle of champagne I got bigger bicep than you." And they met, and Ventura thought he already had it, and they measured, and Schwarzenegger's are 3 inches bigger, and so Ventura's got to give him a bottle of champagne.
Yeah. Yeah, and like that's entirely like goading him into getting exactly what you want, because I think actually Ventura was the one who was like, "Well, you want to put something on it?" And he's like, "Sure, a bottle of champagne."
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, because they were all so fucking competitive. Like the amount of testosterone on this set. I mean, like this is a movie that like not only fails the Bechdel test, but just pisses on it and just like runs away in the opposite direction.
There's literally one woman, and her entire role is to be annoying them and being saved by them and then being scared.
Yeah, and giving some hints. She has a couple of moments where, like, with the blood, like she's like, "By the way, you got him," which leads to the line.
Yeah, but she kept it to herself for like a few hours.
Well, she wasn't sure if she could trust them.
Yeah, she was their prisoner.
Yeah. So, but I mean, she eventually like kind of agrees and follows through. But like if he bleeds, he can be killed. That stuff.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Yeah, exactly. And we wouldn't have gotten that line if she hadn't told him that like he bled.
That's true.
Yeah.
So that's what she was there for, to set up that one line.
Before we move on, I'm just gonna shout out this one. So if you want a good old laugh, go on YouTube and look up Predator the musical.
Sounds amazing.
No, what?
It is a musical. It's a musical number set to this, and the main refrain is, "If it bleeds, we can kill it."
Okay, stop the podcast. I have to go watch this. Goodbye, guys.
Yeah. It's the guys who wrote Hannibal the musical.
Oh wait, Trey Parker and Matt Stone?
No, not Cannibal the musical. Or like
Hannibal the musical.
Sorry, Silence of the Lambs the musical.
Oh, okay.
Just really funny stuff. They do all the Arnold Schwarzenegger ones because like they've got a guy who just does a really good singing Arnold Schwarzenegger voice.
What a great specific talent.
I know, right? So it's a musical number that goes through the plot of it. The YouTube channel is called Lego Lambs, like Lego, like the toy, and then lambs. It's fucking amazing. And every time someone says, "If it bleeds, we can kill it," I just think, "If it bleeds, if it bleeds."
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
All right, yeah, definitely gonna watch that.
So yeah, I gotta get that shit out there. But crazy, good one-liners in this whole thing.
Talking about crazy one-liners, let's just acknowledge that that this is the movie that has the "get to the chopper" line, like the iconic line that everyone uses to make fun of Arnold with.
Yeah, truly great stuff. Man. But let's actually get into the actual shooting of this movie because, again, all right, so first-time screenwriters, sophomore director, big star. Okay, you see that the movie's going to get made. Like, the fact that the director goes on to do just amazing work just in general, you're like, okay, I'm not surprised that he does well. Okay, cool. Like, all right. I did not realize this movie was going to be quite the nightmare it was to film. For one thing, it was over 90 degrees almost the entire time they filmed in Mexico. So, like, just super hot, and they're all wearing heavy gear. People kept passing out all the time on this. So just a general, like, terrible condition to be filming in. Not to mention the bugs. Apparently, several people got bitten real bad. One person actually sat down in a fire ant nest and was completely covered in very painful bites. And like
it was Chavez. It was the vet. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he couldn't even, like, he had been working his arms out, and they had to cover his arms because he was so covered in bites that they couldn't have him be part of the gun show for the majority of the film.
Yeah, can we tell the rest of the him getting bitten by ant story?
Yeah, go for it.
So Chavez so this guy, like, he lies down somewhere between sets and lay down on a nest of fire ants, gets bitten over 100 times, and it's just like, it's apparently just like strips himself completely naked, is like being like dunked into cold water, and then later on during filming, Schwarzenegger and gets married, and oh my God, of course I was just looking at this, and right now I'm blanking on his wife's name.
Maria Shriver.
Oh, thank you. God, I feel stupid about that. Yes, Maria Shriver, and she's calling the cast members individually to invite them up to their suite to meet everybody. And she calls Chavez, and he's in the shower, and he gets out and he picks up the phone, and she's like, "Hi," and he basically is just like, "Who is this? I'm picking ticks off my balls." And she's like, "Oh, this is Maria Shriver. I just wanted to invite everyone up to meet me."
Yeah, they had like a 4-day break in filming so that Schwarzenegger could go fly back up to America, marry a Kennedy, and take 2 days off, and then come back.
Yeah.
But they made that break work for them because they needed a bunch more money to be able to like really finish out the third act. And during Schwarzenegger's wedding, during that break that got forced on them, they were able to edit together a bunch of what they had and send it to the studio. And the studio was like, "Oh yeah, shit, this is looking good," and send them more money.
Oh, was that the same gap? I thought.
Am I mixing up gaps?
I get, it makes the most sense, like once you say it, but they like talk about it in two different frames. So, yeah, that makes sense because they ran out of shooting days, which we'll get into in a second. But yeah, they had 58 days, and or probably 56 days, and when they got to day 48, they only had half the movie shot.
So we were talking about we were talking about bugs. Let's talk about food and water. They're in the Mexican jungle. People were getting sick from the water. People were getting sick from the food. Like if you watch, like, Schwarzenegger's weight is fluctuating throughout all of it because he was like getting dehydrated. He's refusing to drink. They're all refusing to drink the water. They're refusing to eat most of the food. Some of the food that they were eating was filled with bugs. I saw an interview with Bill Duke where he just starts talking about how after a couple weeks they were just eating bugs. They were just eating the bugs for the protein.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Out there in the fucking jungle.
And all of this is not helping the heat situation because they're not drinking water. Like, this is why this movie needed more shoot days, because people were passing out or getting food poisoning all the time.
I mean, it didn't help that they started with a Mexican crew because they couldn't get U.S. People down there for cost and for logistical reasons, who apparently all of whom were more people who assisted on film sets as opposed to the primary crew, which led to them, for example, having lots of ceramic lights that exploded on the first day from all the heat.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So they scrambled, and they ended up bringing in all these guys from Australia who just happened to have passports and could catch the next flight. It was just like a real like rush job of being like, okay, we can get you guys in, because customs were just a little bit more forgiving coming from Australia than America for some reason. Really crazy on that one.
And they can handle the heat.
Yeah.
Well, but you know what couldn't handle the heat? The actual foliage that they were filming around. Like, the plants, because it was so hot, were looking like crisp, and in a lot of cases like also dehydrated.
Yeah.
So they actually had to have a nursery that they would bring more lush green vegetation to put in.
If you like, and this is, and I mean, among the things that I'd never noticed until it was pointed out in one of those interviews, and now I can't not see it, is that through the whole movie, everywhere they go, there's brown dead leaves all over the ground as though it's fall.
Yeah, everywhere.
But the trees are covered in green leaves because they brought in leaves. They brought in like the leaves that are on half the trees there are not the native leaves of that area. Like, they made them look like, apparently one critic at the time like made a thing about how why are there's leaves from New England? I'm looking at leaves from North America all over this Mexican jungle. What's that? Which, again, unless you're like really looking for it, you might not see it first. But now they see it. They're just crawling over dead autumn leaves all over the place, because they just literally, they're in a jungle that they had to make look like a jungle.
Yeah. Well, and part of it also was that the actual dirt showed off too much of like them dragging equipment and footprints and so forth. So to like hide that all, they had to have like leaf people. So it's kind of like Halloween, where like despite shooting in California but being set in New England, they just had like bags of leaves that they would just like layer out to try to disguise their disguise their movements in this case.
That's New England, right? Just throw out some broken fall leaves.
So next up, I mentioned this at the top. So Jean-Claude Van Damme was originally cast to be the Predator. It is the most insane bit of trivia. Like, when you think that if he had been in this movie, because he got fired on set pretty early on, but if he had been in this movie, think about what that star-studded cast that we'd be talking about here. As it was, he was fairly early in his career, and they had fitted him for this costume that did not look very good, and particularly didn't look good for reasons that we'll talk about in a second when we talk about special effects. But the funny thing is, there are so many conflicting accounts for why he got fired. The most forgiving account is that he kept fainting on set. And we know a lot of people were fainting pretty constantly, but he was in a full-body monster suit and just kept passing out in the middle of scenes. And so much so that it was like screwing up the production in general. That is one of the reasons that they say. Another is that the costume looked terrible. You guys can look it up online. It is this weird bug kind of, people have described it looking kind of like a dog. It's got like the inverted kind of ankles, or like knees. They wanted it to have like those like weird like goat legs.
Yeah,
where it's got the inverted ankles. It's got this thin kind of bug. The head looks like either a bug crossed with a kangaroo head.
Yeah, something like that. And it's hard to say.
Like that, like. Yeah.
Like, I have seen a lot of the one that they were using for the filming, which is the one that was designed to work with the special effects to get the cloaking technology going.
Yeah.
So I don't think I've actually seen one. I'm not sure if they ever actually made one of the one that was supposed to be like the end of the movie suit. I'm sure there's designs and I'm sure there's parts of it, but I'm not sure if there was ever a fully assembled suit. And I will say, I saw some shots where they actually showed how the camouflage was going to look with that suit. And you do see more of the form, like the body plan of the Predator in those shots, because it was more distinctly kind of long and slender with like key details, as opposed to the final one, which is a little bit more like a person but chunky in some regards.
And by the way, actually, before we continue, we should say that at this point, it wasn't called the Predator. It was the Hunter.
Yes. Yeah, which there is a line in the movie that is definitely like one of those, like, they said the title, except they had changed the title by the time it came out, where it's like a hunter.
Yeah. I want to get back. I want to defend Van Damme a little bit, but let's.
Okay,
We've got more to say about the suit.
Yeah. Well, no. So like we're going to talk about Van Damme right now.
Yeah, there's all these accounts of like all of them calling him a complainer and talking about how he was complaining about stuff all the time. You know what? There was a moment where they apparently wanted him to do a particular stunt, which was being in this suit. And to be clear, so the way the suit was, because remember how it was supposed to have those inverted goat legs? So it was Jean-Claude Van Damme, and attached to his feet were stilts. He was on stilts. He was on like little, like, diagonal kind of stilts so he could have that inverted leg effect. And apparently there was one spot where they wanted him to do a jump, and he basically looked and was like, that's dangerous. I'm not going to do that. Like, I know my limits. I'm going to break my leg if you want me to do that jump. And he refused to do it. And they had a stuntman do it. And the stuntman broke his leg.
Yeah.
So, like, they were asking him, they were like, so that's bullshit. And that's him being right. And basically, apparently, a lot of the thing is that he talks about in interviews how like he went in to meet with the studio and in meeting with the producers, and he's doing all his jumps and his kicks and having run all around until the moment that they put him in that suit. He thought he was going there to do a movie where he got to be he thought he was going to be kickboxing Arnold Schwarzenegger. He thought he was going to be in some kind of like sleek suit where he could show off his martial arts and his gymnastics, but as an alien, and fight Arnold Schwarzenegger that way. And they show up and the director says in the behind the scenes, oh yeah, he had no idea. He showed up and we were just and we all figured he knew, and we were like, oh, no one told you? No, you're going to be in this crazy suit, and in fact, you're going to, like, no one's ever going to see your face, and you're going to be invisible half the time.
Yeah.
And he just hated it, and it was just not what he thought it was going to be, and he was pissed off the whole time.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, there are easily 5 different accounts when you look at the oral history that are all like, oh yeah, I saw how this played out, and like all of them describe the scene where he got fired differently. Like, one was like he takes the suit, or like the head of the suit, and like throws it to the ground because he's angry, and it breaks. Like, there's ones where like just the producers like see the suit and they're like, oh, he doesn't look right, like we hate the look, and they like fired him because he was cast to be in a look that is totally different than what they go with, because when they recast it, they get Kevin Peter Hall, who is 7'2", and does not need to be on stilts to be towering over everyone. So there's all kinds of different versions. It is probably somewhere in the middle of all of this. I don't know. I'm not sure about, like, Van Damme says someone's leg got broken. I don't see anyone else say it. So like, it may have happened and they're all just like attributing it to something else. It may have been like someone's going to break their leg, and then he just like sort of made it in his head be like that it actually happened. I have no idea.
To be fair,
it's really
though,
interesting.
I'm gonna back Leo up on here. The people were getting sick on this set. I don't feel like the safety concerns for anyone on this set was very high. So I feel like it's totally plausible that would have happened and not discussed. Not talked about.
I could believe every single one of these stories, and I'm sure, you know what, I'm as much in Van Damme's camp as I am in anyone else's on this one, because it's just like they're all different, and I don't know whose is right. But also, we do know that Hollywood has a history of anyone who voices a legitimate complaint getting fired and then being referred to as like a complainer or someone who's not a team player. So
yeah,
it is true that actors who speak out against safety issues oftentimes get blackballed.
I think also specifically, he was a stuntman, right? Like stunt people tend to not be treated terribly well, you know? And so I think that there is a complete and total possibility that that this is a story that no one would just tell. Be like, oh, well, that happens sometimes for stunt people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in either case, I saw one a little bit where Van Damme's talking about how one of them, I think Carl Weathers, basically went up to him and was like, don't quit, let them fire you. Like it'll be better for you if you let yourself get fired as opposed to if you quit. Which I don't know necessarily why that would be, but
probably with some kind of payout, if I had to guess.
Yeah, but and in either case, what is definitely what all accounts agree on is that he was fired with the director basically the producer basically shouting out at me that you'll never work in this town again, you're fired. And then a year later he did Bloodsport,
Right,
and became a household name among action people.
Yeah, so on that note, let's move on to the Predator that we actually got. And I wasn't sure how to like kind of categorize this. Normally when we talk about fifth movies, we sort of talk about pre-production, the actual production, and then post. All of the things that I have to say about post-production were stuff they discovered while they were shooting. A reference that the suit looked weird for the purpose of filming the camouflage effect. Because they were filming entirely in a green jungle, they red screened the situation. So the suit was this bright red, initially this weird like bug frog or bug dog looking thing.
Yeah.
And then later they got the redesign. But yeah, it's just this like full body red suit that they could then key out.
One of the Van Damme stories is the director talking about how Van Damme, when they first put him in that red suit, he didn't get that wasn't actually what it was going to look like on film, and he was basically going around like, this is the stupidest looking suit, this bright red suit, and they had to be like, no, it's going to be invisible. They're going to cut that out.
And it's amazing looking at the behind the scenes documentary where they're trying to explain it because these are people working in the 80s trying to explain basically the concept of green screen, which is a thing that we are super familiar with at this point. But this is just so early in that becoming ubiquitous technology that like they didn't even have the language for it. Like no one says keying out, which is exactly what they're doing. They're like, oh, so we could matte. And it's like, that's sort of what you're doing. But that's more older style special effects than what we're talking about here. You're actually removing you from the shot. And this was actually a really cool way they did it, which is that they would shoot the scene like all the Predator's motions, because for the most part the Predator is not in the same shot with anyone aside from like very specific kills. It's usually like reaction from person cut to the camouflage figure. So they would shoot the Predator's motion with the red the red suit, and then they would shoot the same camera but with a different lens, so that you would end up having a different permutation of how how the foliage actually looked. It would all have this like fisheye effect. And that would be inserted behind the main mat or like the main screen, and that's how you would get this like warping effect as it moved, which I just thought was rather cool. Like
yeah, that's
really
pretty
cool.
rad.
So the Predator design. So I mentioned that it was Kevin Peter Hall that they cast, 7'2" guy, apparently very nice. Unfortunately, passed away not that old a guy. It was like right after Predator 2 that he died. And I think it was like 42 or something like that.
He was in Predator 2, right?
He was in Predator 2, yeah, but then he died shortly after.
Along with side note, do you know who else? Do you know the thing about who they got for all the Predators at the end of Predator 2?
Oh yeah, the Lakers.
Yeah, because there's the scene where they need a whole bunch of Predators, and they're just like, we're in Los Angeles, we need a whole bunch of 7-foot tall people.
Yeah, we need the tallest people we can find. Call the Lakers.
Yeah. Well, that was Glover was the star of that one, and he was apparently a huge fan. And he was like, "I'd love to meet them all. If we could get that, that'd be great." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we could be Predators. Cool."
I know we're not talking about that one, but I just want to take one moment to say that I love so much that it went from Arnold Schwarzenegger to Danny Glover as the fighting Predators people, which is like not what you think of. But anyway,
yeah.
Predator 2 is a better movie than I think people remember it being, but it's not the movie people expected to be the follow-up to this one. But so for the redesign, so they threw out the original design, and they brought in Stan Winston, who had done lots of great stuff, including the Terminator movies.
Yep. Yeah, Schwarzenegger was like, bring in this guy.
Yeah, like special effects legend. And he's working on this thing and working out some sketches for it. And he was working on it on a flight where he was sitting next to James Cameron, who suggested, hey, you know, it'd be really cool if the alien had mandibles. And like that became the signature face for this thing, because James Cameron made a suggestion like, oh, hey, wouldn't that be cool to do?
Moral of the story is, if James Cameron gives you a suggestion on a creature design, you should probably go with it.
I'm just fascinated at the murderer's row of talent that we ultimately got attached to this movie, considering that, again, first-time screenwriter, first-time producer, second-time director, and then just like the biggest people on the planet are backing them up on this movie. It's like insane. So everyone knows when you talk about the Predator movies that there's like the thermal vision is like a very characteristic part of it. When you talk about these movies, everyone remembers, oh yeah, blue with then like the infrared stuff. And you would think like, all right, that's probably not too hard of an effect to do in post, but they actually wanted to do it in lens. They wanted to do it in the camera while filming. But the problem is, if you're filming in a 100-degree jungle, and you have an infrared camera that picks up heat signatures, the people are actually colder than the jungle around them. And so they actually got infrared cameras, and they tried to do it, and then found out it wasn't going to work. And they're like, oh, fuck, how do we do this?
And they tried a few awful sounding methods. They tried having the actors stand near heaters and fires to try and heat themselves up a little bit.
Yep.
They tried just hosing down everything else around them to try and make everything around them colder.
Yeah.
I love that, like, people are passing out and not drinking water, and you're like, you know, why don't you stand near this heater?
I'm standing near the fire, yeah.
Why don't we dehydrate you more?
Amazing nobody died on this
It's
set.
honestly
I know, right?
really
And-
amazing. Which is why I still think that maybe that stunt person broke their leg, because honestly...
Yeah. And also the fact, and let's also not forget that that they're on hills the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple
And in
of
mud.
couple sources where they're in mud, where Schwarzenegger like talks about how there were days where you'd basically just be, you know, one leg higher than the other, no matter where you were all day long, because they're just on hills, and it's just how awful that was to film on while they're dealing with all the rest of this crap.
It's amazing that this film actually turned out as well as it is, because there's so many issues with it actually being made.
I mean, look, it is a testament to fucking powering through and just believing in a vision and just going for it, which is what they all did. I really enjoyed the helicopter shots.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when there's the two helicopters flying in formation on screen with each other, I was just very impressed, because that means that they had 3 helicopters flying in tight formation through the jungle together.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
I know nothing.
there's so many good shots.
I know nothing about flying helicopters, but it seems like tough. Seems tough to me.
Yeah. There's so many good shots in this, though. Like, honestly, it's really shot well. Like, I mean, I think iconic, right, is just the shot where he sees the predator, and he's, like, hiding underneath that tree, covered in mud, like, just praying, and then you see it, and you kind of, like, they make sure that you're seeing it from his point of view, right? So it's like, he sometimes you don't really see him, and it's through that, like, just pathway, and it's just perfect as he just emerges from the water with, like, the electricity, like, kind of sprouting off of him. Like, it's, like, actually, like, a very, like, I can't even imagine what that felt like on a large, like, you know, like, in the movie theater. Like, that must have been amazing. Says the person who just saw it recently.
Speaking of seeing it from his point of view, you know what I would be something that I forgot, because it had been so long since I'd seen this. What I forgot that you saw the alien ship in the beginning.
Yeah,
I sort of
it's so
was
quick.
assuming. I assumed, for some reason, I was just coming into this figuring, oh, surely there must be a period of movie where you the audience don't know what's going on. But no, because they show the ship coming, and then right from the beginning, they're showing you bits of them being watched by this thing, and they make it very clear early on that it is invisible by showing it through the predator's eyes, all the predator POV shots of how close he's getting to them, and they clearly don't see him, and you're like, oh shit, this is an invisible thing. And I guess I feel like almost anyone else would have tried to make this. I feel like there'd be so much where, at least for a little bit of time, you, the audience, are with them and don't know what's going on. And I would actually enjoy seeing a cut of it, and I would be not at all surprised if this existed somewhere. I figure somewhere out there's a film student who's taken Predator and just removed all the Predator POV shots so that there is a cut of the film where the audience gets to experience what's going on along with Arnold and his crew. And until they see the true evidence that there's an invisible alien out there, the audience doesn't get to know it. I feel like that is the other way to do it. I'm not saying that's better. I like the way they did it here.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that it brings the audience along. These are really big tough guys being stalked by something outside of their experience, and you are going to see what it is seeing, and make sure of that. But it would also be fun to, I think, to see it without all that.
Yeah, in my head it was always just like a shooting star in the background, and then you see it. But no, you're right. You actually even see like the details of the ship.
Yeah.
At the beginning, which is
you
crazy.
see that the ship comes. You see the pod detached from the ship. You see it burn a little bit on entry into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yep. I do want to highlight some cool creativity that came from this, which is that when they tried to shoot with infrared cameras and everything was basically just all red because it was all 100 degrees and the people weren't any warmer than anything else around them, that actually did inspire a cool thing. So every time you're looking at the Predator's vision, his POV, they do this like artificially darkened blue kind of look, and then they like add highlight colors and posts to get it all to look like it should for kind of a thermal reading. But at the end of the movie, when the Predator takes his mask off and he takes it down, everything goes red. Because what they're indicating there is that the Predator's mask is actually tuning it so that it's only seeing the heat signatures of living things, and that once he doesn't have the mask on, it's not filtering it, and just so he's actually almost blind during that fight.
Yeah, it makes no sense why he takes that mask off.
Oh, it's just, he can't breathe without it because it's like clearly a breather because like gas goes out. Or at least not for very well. He's toying with him. Like that's kind of what it's there. It's just like, all right, I took the gun off, I took everything off, like no tricks. Now I'm just gonna fuck you up, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a pissing contest tough guy move. Like, oh, don't worry, I'll fight you without this. I'll fight you without this. How about that? Come at me now. It was obnoxious and it was wonderful. But I did have a moment where I was like, he can breathe. Like, did he do a breathe? Like, did he do a check for our atmosphere? Like I was like
when he takes the mask off and there's gas, there's bits of gas coming out of part of it. It was clearly feeding some sort of gas into him.
Yeah.
But I guess it doesn't need it.
I think it's supposedly that the atmosphere is not particularly healthy for them, but they. I mean, again, like this is also a movie we're talking about where there's been so much lore built out after it, like
right.
Trying to have a conversation about some of the things in here that it's like, yeah, all these things have been answered by later writers who were, it's not like some like well-crafted world, it's all been built upon. It was some sort of like filtering system where it's an atmosphere they can survive in for a while, but it's not particularly good. He would need to put his mask on probably in a few minutes. But he just, in this moment, was just like, oh, I'm going to beat you real bad. And part of the reason is just so that we can get that fucking amazing face.
Oh, yeah.
The crab
Absolutely.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again.
Listen, I'm not disputing that. I get why the filmmakers wanted it to happen. I just the nitpicky part of me is just going, why are you taking off your spacesuit while you're on an alien planet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I get it.
I think maybe there's a little bit something nihilistic about it too. Like, oh, I'm gonna take this shit off, beat the crap out of you, and then blow myself up. So, I mean, it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice.
And you know what? And I'm realizing now, actually, it coincides with what we saw earlier in the movie when Sonny, the big Native American dude, the big tracker, throws his gun away and takes off his equipment and takes out his knife and cuts himself on the chest to go, here I am, come at me. And that's what the Predator's doing. He's doing that same exact moment. I'm going to lose all my advantages and just show that I can take you on. Which is the thing that separates this, because the whole thing of it is a hunter with better technology hunting already dangerous prey. But the difference between the analog between that and the analog, of course, being humans, being like what it's like this is, it's showing a little bit of what it's like for people to be hunted by something more technologically advanced, kind of like when we hunt lions and tigers, which are the difference being that if you throw your gun away to fight a lion or a tiger, you're not going to have a good time after that, which is why potentially the smaller version of the Predator, like a smaller, sleeker version of the Predator suit would make more sense if the whole thing is that he needs his technology. But no, they went with even physically one-on-one without his guns, without his amazing tracking equipment and everything. This thing is also just plain stronger than a human being can be.
Yeah. This is more the unfairness of it all. Like whatever I think there is a commentary going on about the nature of like safari hunters and like the differential in terms of like what you're doing when you do those kind of hunts. But I think it would be more equivalent to a thing like when you're hunting like boar or deer or something where you actually might have a physical chance against them in a fight, maybe even a superior chance if you have a knife, depending. I'm not going to get into that one. But I think what we're trying to comment on is that like this is not a good guy. Like, this is not even like an honorable guy. I would argue that the later Predator movies have built up this little like honorable warrior culture thing, and like the comics certainly have. But I don't think that is supported by the text of this movie. I think that this movie,
there is nothing honorable about setting off that bomb at the end.
No.
Yeah, no, there's not
at all. You've lost the fight.
I will say that he honestly does, even though he is actively hunting the group, he actually does not lay a hand on the woman when he could have in that first scene, right? She's actually being hunted, so he is a predator that goes after predators in this particular text, right? Because she's being hunted down, she's their prisoner anyway, and he doesn't understand that context, but he actively strikes down someone who's trying to catch her. So I can see where the kernel of what became this altruistic kind of like classy warrior type thing could come in, because you can make an argument that the predator is only interested in other predators to become the apex predator, even in this film.
Predator versus Dexter.
Yep.
That's the next one.
He only is going to hunt serial killers.
Like they have done quite a few times. We'll talk about that in a second, but yeah, it's it's just an interesting moment where we get this character just trying to like prove its physical superiority in addition to its technological superiority, and then ultimately Arnie is actually the better tactical mind. Like he lures him into a fake trap so that he goes around and steps into the real trap, and that's brilliant. Like that was fantastic right there.
Because evil genius.
Yeah, again, evil genius Arnold Schwarzenegger is the master there.
Is that? Oh, I didn't get. Okay, I got that he avoided one trap, but because Arnold had been smart enough to put up two traps, he still had the other one. You think he was deliberately trying to not?
I think that's a difference without a distinction. I think that the first trap, if the creature was dumb enough to step into it, would have killed him too. But I think that it was very obvious on purpose, or maybe not on purpose, but I think that the assumption was that we were trying to get him into the position he ultimately was in, so you could drop the log on him.
You know what? I like that. I like that better because there is the thought that I'm watching Arnold sitting there going, come on, kill me. And I'm just like, no one's going to fall for that. Why do you think anyone's going to fall for that? You're being too obvious. Okay. That I like your explanation then.
Yeah. And like, it's worth noting that the final confrontation, Arnold Schwarzenegger does not have any of his actual like sophisticated human weapons. Like it is entirely at this point him going off of the stuff that he can make and provide for himself, and using like mud, which is such a cool component, like flipping the invisibility scenario when the cloak has been sort of broken on the Predator at this point.
No, at that point it's been. Oh no, you're right. No, only sort of at that point. You're right.
But like it's such like the confrontation, like the third act is so wonderful. But that's all shot after the break because they ran out of time shooting. They cut together this thing. They had this gap. I guess it's because of the Schwarzenegger wedding. But this is the scenario that we always talk about in the main episodes, where it's like, well, you can't just say you would get more money or more time. You have to say how you would do it. And this movie did it by being like, hey, look at this cut that we have of, the last 8 days. They reshot the mercenary base firefight to make it more dramatic and explosive. So that actually probably contributes to why we were saying like, hey, there's like this weird discontinuity in terms of like them saying like we want to save the hostages and it just becomes this huge explosive firefight. They were trying to sell it as an action movie scene. We probably got more of those like one-liners in that scene there because they were trying to make it this big dramatic thing that would catch studios' eyes. And then we like can insert the stuff about them being scared. They put it all together, and that earned enough attention from studios that they got the budget to finish up again about half the movie that they hadn't actually shot, which included hiring a famous special effects guy to create a new suit and do all this stuff. Like, again, I had no idea when we said, like, hey, let's talk about this movie, that it wasn't just going to be like, it's pretty weird that they didn't fire Jean-Claude Van Damme, huh? And, like, I thought it was going to be, like, a 30-minute episode.
Yeah, it's pretty good. They fired him. It sucks.
Yeah. Because that third act is fucking brilliant. The whole movie, I think, is really well done. This is one of those, like, I'm a broken record kind of points here. I am a sucker for movies that follow the pattern of the Beowulf epic, and there's a lot to be said about this movie following the Grendel component of that story arc. It's a group of the most badass warriors traveling into a scenario that they think they understand, only to find a supernatural threat hiding in the shadows that whittles them down. And it's that. Now, I think it's as deliberate as with Alien, which the Alien trilogy is very much the three parts of the Beowulf saga. No, I think that is a more deliberate take on Beowulf in a sci-fi setting. But I think that there's certainly very clear parallels in theme, and that can just be sort of like the monomyth component of our culture. But hey, this is a pretty good one. Like, if you're looking at this as like a take on Beowulf versus Grendel, it works real well, and I enjoy that.
Nerd.
Yeah. But yeah, so this movie was a huge success, at least in terms of box office. Critics didn't love it at the time, but it has gone on to be a classic for action movie fans.
Apparently, there was critics that called it boring and dull and predictable, and it's just like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I don't know how you could possibly watch this movie and go dull.
I think if you're coming off of like the string of Schwarzenegger movies leading up to it, and you think that this is just another Commando, you could be convinced that, oh, it's just another big action movie thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. But
that means you didn't watch it.
Well, what I'm saying is, when you look at it through the lens of it being a subversion of that, where the characters who are the protagonists and the undefeatable, like, ubermenches that are battling it out in most of the movies of this time, and this is actually then being like the American military forces that are here. Even if Dutch is being played by an Austrian, he's supposed to be an American soldier veteran who's gone mercenary. These characters,
even if he's an Austrian called Dutch, he's playing an American.
Yes.
Yes.
They're ultimately outmoded by this thing, and that, I think, is a really interesting theme here, where we're taking the tropes of the traditional action movie of the era, introducing this supernatural element and showing how they don't stack up to it. And I think that's a really cool thing, and why people continue to talk about it.
Yeah.
And why they continue to do adaptations of it, why they do crossovers of stuff, why in Predator 2, when they have an Easter egg of an alien skull on the Predator ship, where it's like, oh, fuck, we have to do Alien versus Predator now. Okay. Yeah. Since then, the Predator has fought Batman multiple times. They've fought Superman. I think at one point they fought Tarzan. They have done all kinds of weird crossovers.
And you know what? And they set up in this movie that that this has been happening for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Because they have the woman, they have the woman say like old women in the village would tell stories about the demon that makes trophies of men, that comes in the hottest years and hunts in the jungle. And they set it up right there.
Yeah, I caught that line on this rewatch, and it's like, oh, so this happens all the time in this area. Like, this is where they go to safari. And I love the safari take. Like, I think, again, that they move away from that more towards, like, honorable hunter society. But I love the idea of this just being an alien world that's probably way too hot, and that's why they only come when it's, like, really hot. And it's, they have a weird atmosphere, that they have some kind of rebreather, but they also just like to come and just being like, yeah, we'll kill some fucking people. Like, that sounds like a good old weekend. Like, and that's what the Predator's doing here.
I mean, honestly, is there like a equivalent of holiday vacations Predator? Like the Griswolds, but like Predator and family coming on safari? Because I kind of want to see that.
It's just like a nice, like, happy kind of comedy movie that involves predators coming and killing a bunch of people on Earth.
Yeah. Like,
or just traveling to, like,
as a
Disney.
family.
Yeah.
Well, if it needs to be hot and tropical, they go to Disney World. Like, it's Florida, it's gross, it's humid. They're there. They're just checking out shit.
Yeah, and they can still hunt. They can still be part of it, But they're teaching.
They're just quietly snatching people off roller coasters.
They're actually teaching their children.
It's a small world after all. It's a small world after.
And they're teaching their kids how to hunt, but it's at Disneyland.
Because adult predators aren't going to go after kids.
Right, exactly.
But the children need to learn.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Actually, this is actually working out really well. So there's apparently this whole like group of like YouTubers that are like young kids who like sneak into like back areas of like Disney World and like film sections where they like find like unused animatronics or like shut down sets and so forth. Can you imagine if there's like a bunch of those kids and they're being tailed by a child predator?
Do it. I want to
I need to
see
rephrase
this.
that because that sounded wrong.
Yes, please rephrase
it. A youth of the predator species.
Yes. Yeah, that was inappropriate, Case. I don't care if you work too much this week.
Hey, who would you want to play the child predator?
Oh, that's...
Who do you think would make a good child predator, Praise?
Yeah.
Well, this is the time to bring back Jean-Claude Van Damme, but not have him in stilts.
Oh, terrible.
It's redemption. Like, they gave Shane Black the attempt to do one of the sequels. He wrote and directed The Predator. Sorry. So, yeah, this could be the redemption of Jean-Claude Van Damme in the franchise. And the best part is you can tie it in with everyone trying to figure out what happened to Buzzy. So we can be like, they got our boy! And, fans of Jenny Nicholson will know what I just referenced.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
I love this idea. Epcot. Like, think about how cool that would be. It's at Epcot, and like there's just kids going missing all around the world.
I just think that like it could be like pretty like terrible and heartwarming at the same time. You know, like earning your dad predator. Oh my gosh, the father predator's approval. This sounds so wrong. But you know, just you know, like go forth, my child. Go forth and hunt. It'd be great. Somebody write it. Somebody make it.
Look, somebody out there make some child predators. And now let's talk about it.
Well, and now I feel like we've talked a lot about this movie. We've kind of gone through all the steps here. Like there isn't really that much else to say. It's like, oh, look, the predator blood was by taking glow sticks and cracking them open. You know, these aren't the hard ones. Like, these aren't the adversity. The adversity was all the shooting conditions, the crew not knowing what they were doing, having to fly in people from Australia, having it be a new director, new writers, all of this stuff. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger, evil genius, fucking around with everyone else, apparently to inspire them to be better in shape for the shoot. But still, like, just a crazy fucking shoot. But they made also one of the greatest sci-fi horror classics of all time in this.
Can I tell you one of the reasons that I picked this off your list is because when I think of movies that I'm gonna make my fucking kid watch when he's in his teen years, this is on there. This is a scenario that I have imagined. Is a family night when I'm with my kid and some friend of his, and I'm just like, all right, movie night time. You guys know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is, right? Yeah, the politician. You know he used to be an actor, right? Here's your options. Arnold Schwarzenegger as a robot from the future trying to kill the savior of humanity. Arnold Schwarzenegger as a secret agent on Mars who gets involved with a mutant revolution. Or Arnold Schwarzenegger in a jungle fighting an invisible alien. Choose your movie. Like, that is a scenario I've envisioned, and I saw this on your list. I was like, yep, I want to talk about that.
That just looks like a wonderful glimpse into the future, and I
yes. Can we talk a little bit about the scene where they just destroy the jungle?
Oh yeah, sure, okay, yeah. I think that holds the record for most gunshots in a scene.
So Mac, played by Billy Duke, and I forget his name, but played by Jesse Ventura. Let's just call him Jesse Ventura.
Yeah, that's fine.
Who clearly have this wonderful friendship that I really enjoy.
Yeah, unsung great moment there. Yeah, they're like, they were in a unit together in Vietnam, and now they're just best buds.
Yeah, and who clearly like have like little inside jokes with each other and inside stuff, and they share their whiskey, their little flask of whiskey. And again, I love the idea that like they have a scene together where they're talking about just how thick this jungle is, which is extra funny if you know that the film crew literally had to thicken the jungle.
Right.
And then Jesse Ventura gets shot by the Predator, and Bill Duke actually sees the Predator, sees the glowing eyes, freaks the fuck out, picks up the Gatling gun, and just starts mowing down the forest, which apparently is a signal to the rest of them. If you see a guy mowing down an area with the Gatling gun, you also mow down that area. And every single member of which means they've done that before.
Right.
And so every single member of the unit goes and just starts firing into a general area, just going, we're going to turn this entire section of jungle into nothing but dead things and destroy everything. And what they had to do in shooting that is they actually, because they were firing blanks, of course, which still had the effect of actual, like, you know, fire kind of barking out of that gun. Like, it still felt to them like they were shooting real stuff.
Yeah, blanks usually actually have more gunpowder than real bullets.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's louder.
Okay, cool. And they basically just like had to outfit that whole section of forest with wires, so that as they were shooting the blanks, they had set people just like pulling down on the wires and pulling down all the bits of jungle. And then they would do a take, and then all the actors would like have to go off and do some other stuff while they spent the next few hours resetting that whole section of jungle so they could do another take of it. But yeah, like that whole sequence there is just awesome because, again, it implies that they've done that particular technique before. They're all on board with it. No, like there's never a moment where I was like, what do we do? Like, oh no, he's firing the Gatling gun in that direction. That means we destroy that whole direction.
There's actually a foreshadow. So when they encounter the skinned Green Berets, they observe it's like, oh, it must have been an ambush because they find all the gun casings from them. And they talk about how it must have been an ambush going on there. And so at this point now, like, they've started to get scared. They're what, 2 down at this point? Or 3 down?
Yeah.
With Ventura. And so when they're all freaking out on this, in this scenario. And with the Gatling gun going off, then their location has been established. So they're like, well, we better make sure that anything's around here is dead because we're very clearly... sitting ducks if we stop firing. So it's a nice bit there because I didn't notice it on previous watches, and then it's here. It's like, oh, exactly what happened to the first crew is happening to them now.
Yeah, there's the part where the tracker, when they find the first crew and the big tracker, Sonny, basically just like looks at Schwarzenegger and is like, they were shooting in all directions. Yeah, like whatever it was, they were shooting everywhere because they were beset by an invisible foe. And then Duke Mac, Bill Duke, has the moment where he just kind of loses his mind and flips out, going after the Predator. And Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers. Schwarzenegger starts to go after him. Carl Weathers goes, no, I go after him. And then Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers have this really abnormally long moment between them, considering that we just established you've got to run after your guy who's freaking out, and they take like a full minute and a half before he actually goes, with moments of, all right, you go do it. Hey, wait, take this. All right, one more one-liner. I'll see you around. And then I'm just like, he's getting farther away, dude. Like, go.
Sam, were there any scenes that jumped out to you that we haven't talked about?
Just because we just mentioned one-liners, I felt like one of the one-liners, which was clearly a one-liner, that just rang so freaking true, might be Schwarzenegger's best reading of a line, which is, "You're an ugly motherfucker." Yeah. Because it just rang so true. Like, it's clearly a one-liner, and they felt like it needed to be said. But it actually was like a real moment. Like, I was just like, yeah, I could see people really saying that. And the delivery of it was like not like a normal like kind of one-liner. Like, it just felt like this is a real moment. So I wanted to give props to that because I was like, oh, that felt. I would probably say that.
You're right. His delivery is very genuine. His delivery is very like, wow, I was not expecting that kind of thing. Can I tell you what's fun about that moment for me is that I'm sure like the first time that I saw this, I believe was on TV, where it was like being censored and edited, and and Schwarzenegger goes, "You are one ugly mother," and then the creature cuts him off by shouting.
Oh,
When the creature cuts him, and the first time that I saw it not censored, I was like, "Oh, I never realized he finished the word. I thought that's just how it was. You are one ugly mother." Cuts him off. That's how it was on TV.
that's actually a clever way of doing it.
like that is the yippee-ki-yay motherfucker of this movie and of this franchise. In later movies, they have it. And actually, just like the Die Hard movies, on the ones that are supposed to be a little bit more all ages, like the Alien vs. Predator ones, for example, they do cut it at the mother. And it's like, oh, but that's also what they do for the Die Hard ones. Like, it's kind of fascinating that in both scenarios, their catchphrases end with motherfucker, and like the mother allows for them to have a cut that is actually fairly seamless. Like, you know exactly what was supposed to be said, and it still works.
Yeah.
Pretty sure the last time that I actually saw Die Hard on a channel where they would have to censor it, they just did it in a way that they had him go, "Yippee-ki-yay, melon farmer," in just a way that you saw some editor just being like, "You all know what's happening. Like, who cares?" Like,
this is what happens when you find a stranger in the Alps.
yes, exactly like that. Yes.
One last thing I want to call attention to is the sound design for the Predator, because I realize we haven't mentioned it. I think it's just good. I don't have any notes about it being like, oh, this was like, something that was adversity and they course corrected. This was just like, oh, this idea of the Predator, like a duck whistle, repeating back what people have said to lure them in. Like, he even like does the like here, like kind of like lines from Bill Duke's character at points. And then at the end, when he's dying, I don't know when I finally clicked, but it was like as an adult, I was like, oh wait, he's not laughing. He's copying the laugh from Billy the Scout.
Yeah.
I thought his copying things was fun, was fascinating, because when he first starts to do it, your first thought is, oh, he's learning the language. No, he's not. He's just recording sound specifically to use it to fuck with people.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, I want to say about the sound is they actually added a very nice kind of like crackle, like a kind of crackle when he like first comes out of the water, like, and it's just kind of like, because it's different enough that it's not in the atmosphere of the jungle, right? So we've heard different sounds from the jungle, but this is different. It's mechanical, but it's kind of like a clicking kind of crackle to it. And it's just kind of like nice to have that, because it's this moment where you see this thing emerge and you're kind of close in on it, and there's like, kind of and then you just hear this sound. And even as he turns off the kind of the electrical power around him and kind of sets his settings so that he's good again, it's still kind of there. And even though it's very light, it adds to the tension, because it's one of the few times where the score kind of quiets down, right? Which is really great, because Arnold is trying to be quiet, right? He's like, oh shit. And the score kind of quiets down and the jungle feels kind of quiet. And it's just this crackling sound from, the Predator. And it's a really cool moment. I think like the sound in that way for this film is really well thought out.
Can I talk about, just because you made me think of it just now, talking about the Predator getting in water and having that happen. When after Schwarzenegger has like just barely escaped and fallen off the cliff into the water, and he's crawling out in the mud and he's catching a breather and he thinks he's escaped, and then something invisible falls into the water behind him.
Yeah.
And it's allowing a moment to see Arnold Schwarzenegger being afraid is just a great moment that not a lot of Schwarzenegger movies are going to have, because he's always just like, he's either stoic or he's just confident and destroying everything. And seeing him crawling away, going in this moment of like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. But he's not saying oh shit, oh shit, but he's got that, and I like that it has that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really well done movie, and again, like it's such a good finished product that I was shocked to find out actually how rocky that whole progression was, because it does come across so well and like so well constructed in its finished form.
Yeah, I'm finding myself. I just keep on wanting to talk about more and more scenes. Like we could just sit here and just continually talk about how amazing each scene is, which just makes it crazy that the entire cast and crew was just passing out the whole freaking time.
And for various reasons, not even just for one specific reason, you know?
No.
You could pick it. It's like a Russian roulette of like what's going to go wrong today.
All kinds of reasons to pass out. But hopefully our audience has not passed out, because this has been a great episode.
Hey.
Leo, it's been great chatting with you. We didn't really give you a chance to shout out your stuff at the beginning, but what do you got going on? Like, you're an actor. We last time we talked like on some of the more horrifying stories of acting that you and I have shared, but give your plugs. Tell people who you are and what you got going on.
Oh man. So what have I so this summer, since last we spoke, I shot this short horror film, which is going to be part of a horror anthology series called Twisted Fiction. It's going to be streaming on Tubi, on one of those other streaming things. God, okay, so this is how I'm going to describe my character, and I want to be very clear. I'm the bad guy. I don't like my character here. Suppose if Harvey Weinstein employed Bill Cosby's tactics.
Sounds like a real child predator.
Yep.
No, not children. But and basically, so that's my character, and I run afoul of some witches who spend the rest of the time just completely destroying me in horrible psychological and physical torturous ways. So that's fun. That's something I shot, and which I think they're still in post production, but hopefully that'll be streaming up soon. There's 2 episodes of Twisted Fiction currently that can be found, and this is going to be episode 3. I shot one of those half documentary kind of things. Like it's part of it is actors who playing people who actually lived, and part of it is going to be historians talking about stuff about the history of Wall Street. I play some dude who got arrested for insider trading in the 80s, and that's going to be streaming on Curiosity Stream, which is some new service that's all educational stuff. And those are the 2 things that I shot since last we spoke, and
Awesome. Well, this will be dropping in, but behind the scenes for everyone, we tend to
sometime in the future.
Yeah, we tend to record these fairly far in advance of when they actually come out. So this will actually be about 8 weeks from now when this comes out. So if they're out, we'll definitely link to it.
We recorded this before that other crazy storm that you know about. Yep. That's me being very cynical about the near future.
Yeah.
The world. But yeah, we'll obviously like put any links to any plugs you've got going on when this comes out. And thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Leo.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, this was a really fun.
This was fun. Yeah.
As for us, you can find more episodes of the show over at certainpov.com. You can also find a link to our Discord server there, where you can engage with all of us directly. We're doing this call on Discord right now, so come chat with us. But if you don't want to chat with us in as one-to-one or on like such a small community, and you prefer the anonymity of the vaster internet, you can find the podcast on Twitter at Another Pass. You can find me at Case Aiken. Sam, where can people find you?
Here. Just tweet at Case. If you have a problem with something I said, just tweet at Case. He'll tell me.
Yes, because
He'll
you
tell
are
me.
camouflaged like some sort of hunter, stealthing around.
Yes, but
invisible
not
to the naked eye.
But absolutely not a child predator.
No, not a child predator.
She only predates adults, okay?
But please, check out our Discord or check out our website. You can find tons of great shows. We've added a whole bunch of new ones recently, like Circling Cersei, which is a great book club podcast on Madeline Miller's Cersei. We added Fables and Reflections just recently, which is a great Neil Gaiman podcast. So check those out. Those are at certainpov.com. Sam, what do we have on the docket?
Next time on Another Pass, we'll be talking about Highlander 2, The Quickening. But until then, if you've enjoyed this, pass it on.
Thanks for listening to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe and review the show on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
And Craig survived this whole time.
Wow, Craig! This is what you get for talking shit about him. You tell him, Craig. You show him.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there. So we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
I have the chat open, and so I'm just watching this Ewok GIF dance. I'm like, what propelled me? Like, what compelled me to put this on there?
No, that was perfect.
Yeah,
That
it's
was
awesome.
Exactly what we needed at the time. It is mesmerizing watching that Ewok.
Yeah, it's definitely... I mean, and what better to represent the Caravan of Courage than Disco Wicket?
Join Geek Elite's Jessica and John as they open the VHS Gems treasure box of nostalgia. Rediscover the movies from the time of auxiliary cables, blockbuster rentals, and automatic rewind machines. See if these gemstone movies still hold their luster, or if they should be polished and recut for a more modern appeal, or even if it's time to let them turn to dust. New episodes of VHS Gems are released Thursdays at noon Arizona time on geekelitemedia.com and a podcatcher near you.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.